I cannot imagine a Christmas without candle tea.
I really didn't like Christmas, and then all of a sudden, you Moravians made me love Christmas again.
And when you finish, you have the Christmas spirit.
Known as the City of the Arts, Winston-Salem, North Carolina is a place of innovation and tradition. One of the most beloved traditions is the candle tea in December. The Salem community had been founded by the Moravians in 1766, and they brought with them from Germany a rich set of traditions for celebrating Christmas.
A lot of the things that we think about as traditional Christmas, chestnuts roasting on an open fire and that sort of thing, really date to the 19th century. A lot of people say they started with Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. The 18th century Christmas celebrations of the Christian church were much more solemn. They did not want to have too much merriment or festivity. That was especially with the Calvinist forefathers that came to America. That sort of thing was frowned upon. So those services would have been very simple and not what we think of as Christmas tradition today. The Moravians were celebrating Christmas as the European community that they were. And among the things they valued were art and especially music, and they would decorate their sanctuaries with greenery. So in their celebration of Christmas, they didn't much resemble their American neighbors.
In 1929, the first Christmas of the Great Depression, the ladies of Home Moravian Church decided to open the doors and invite the public to enjoy the unique Moravian Christmas traditions.
I've heard it best described as our gift to the community. We showcase our Moravian customs and traditions and have them staged in various rooms in the Single Brothers house over the course of 2 weeks in early December.
In those early days, a tea was a social gathering with refreshments. The ladies decided to hold the event in the historic Single Brothers house in Salem, one of the original buildings in the settlement. The authenticity of the historic building is an important part of the experience.
Candle tea is not an event so much as it's an experience. And we bring people into this historic home and we try and have them imagine what it's like for a bunch of teenage boys to have lived here.
That room in there is just like being in history. That room, when the brothers moved out of the brothers' house in the 1800s, that room was never used for anything, and so it never changed.
Those stones were put in place by the backs of the brothers that built this house. These are the floors the brothers walked upon, unlike most colonial locations where you will visit. This is the original, those are reconstructions.
Well, many people tell us that this is really the beginning of the Christmas season for them because you get the music, you get the sights of things, the smells of the candles, the wax melting, the sugar cake and coffee that you are served. You see the puts, you hear the Christmas story and see the nativity scene. So you get the whole story of Christmas in about an hour's worth of time.
Singing together is central to Moravian worship. Moravians published the first hymnals for congregational singing in the 16th century. And of course that carries into the Christmas tradition. Visitors to candle tea gather in the saal, or meeting room, to sing Christmas hymns together, led by the historic Tannenberg organ.
This organist has one keyboard. The colors are reversed, so I have a whole bunch of black keys and a few white keys. which was actually quite common in keyboard instruments until probably sometime in the 19th century. There are 5 stops, 5 different rows of pipes, each of which makes a different sound. And that's how I can make it louder or softer or get different effects out of it. This is a real treasure. You know, here in Salem, we're quite fortunate to have 2 of Brother Tannenberg's organs out of only 9 that are left in existence. He was the first and certainly sort of the Cadillac of organ builders here in what became the United States in the late 18th century. It's certainly one of the highlights, certainly the beginning of my Christmas season. And it's just a whole lot of fun. You just can't imagine how much fun it is to sit up here, have this room full of people singing Christmas carols and obviously loving it.
A children's choir often sings.
I'm pretty sure my first memory was singing in the choir.
Candle tea is a Christmas holiday experience that touches all of your senses. You hear the stories about Christmas in Salem, North Carolina. You sing hymns with people that you may or may not know in a very dim-lit room that's very reverent and spiritual. You learn about our tradition of making candles, beeswax candles, and the significance that those candles mean.
Beeswax candles are an important part of the Moravian Christmas observance.
That's a tradition that dates back to 1747 in Marienborn, Germany, where the pastor wanted an object lesson for the children's sermon. So he took this beeswax candle and tied a red ribbon around it and explained to the children that the beeswax stood for the purity of Jesus Christ, the flame was the light of Christ, which shines into our lives, and the pastor encouraged the children to let their light shine, and the red ribbon stands for the blood of Christ. Now, this candle tradition caught fire, as it were, very quickly, and people began using them in other love feast services at Christmas Eve throughout the world.
I did multiple jobs those early years, but once Cock-a-Line back taught me how to make beeswax candles. That was pretty much my job from then on, and that's the one I love.
I grew up Moravian, and my mother was always involved in candle tea. So I grew up watching her make candles. She made them year-round.
That is exciting for me as well, to see everyone's faces as they come in and see the candles being made, and just kind of the start of the tradition and the Christmas season getting started.
The first time I think I worked candle tea was with my mom, and we worked in candle sales, and there was this big crowd of people, and I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be so stressful. And it ended up being a really good experience.
I think I have the claim to fame as the very first boy who helped with candle making during the candle tea.
While I'm making the candles, I ask them sometimes to sing a Christmas hymn with me. Sometimes we sing Silent Night or Hark the Herald Angels Sing while I'm waiting for the wax to harden and I can pull the candles. So it's a very meaningful experience to me, and I feel like it's very important to try to make it special for those children.
My favorite job is probably doing the candle demonstration in the kitchen, where you explain what all the steps are and you pull the candles out of the mold at the end. I do that the most. I usually do that about 4 or 5 times every year.
Most people, especially children, are amazed and they shriek with delight when you pull out all 8 candles and they come out beautifully. Even adults will gasp with, I think, joy and amazement.
All of a sudden they see the 2 working out, and just beautifully they come out, and there's always a big ah.
That's a little stressful when you have to pull the candles out of the mold in front of all those people. But you get it down to a science after as many years as I've been doing it. But it's always fun when you pull those candles out and people go, "Ooh!" Yeah.
I think the first-timers are amazed. First of all, the music upstairs, which they can hear before they actually get in. and then they smell the candle beeswax come down and that wonderful aroma. Watch the candle making, then they go and taste sugar cake and coffee.
An important part of the Moravian Christmas tradition is the love feast, the sharing of a simple meal, usually coffee and sweetened bun or sugar cake, during the singing of hymns.
Love Feast is a special Moravian worship tradition. It dates actually back to the agape meals of the early Christian communities in the book of Acts. We date our first Love Feast to 1727. It is a fellowship meal. It's not a sacrament like communion. It's a meal that we take together as a congregation with simple elements. In our congregation, we like to use Love Feast buns and coffee. So it's a time when we are together in the sanctuary, taking the elements of this simple meal and enjoying the fellowship.
So sugar cake and coffee are an important part of candle tea as well.
They sit down in here and they're served with sugar cake and Moravian coffee. And if you don't know sugar cake, it's a very sweet bread with lots of sugar and butter. And Moravian coffee has lots of cream and sugar.
But I think when I was maybe 7 or 8, I got to be one of the sugar cake serving girls. So I got to dress up in the old Salem dress that I love wearing. It's so fun to wear. And I found serving all of the visitors and some familiar faces just really fun to do, and I also got to sneak a lot of sugar cake during my shift.
Well, it's a total sensory experience, you know, and here you smell the candles as you're coming in, you smell the coffee if it's being made, you get to see it, you get to taste something if you're here, and the same thing with Love Feast. So I think that's part of the appeal of it.
They're excited. They've just left the kitchen, they've had some good sugar cake and coffee and so forth. And particularly ones who have never seen this before. You come into this, it's sort of a dimly lit room, there's a Moravian star hanging, and it's how you go, wow.
One Moravian tradition that has caught on around the world is the Moravian Advent Star. Originally a geometry lesson in Moravian schools, it became a beloved Advent decoration, reminding us of the star that led the wise men to the infant Jesus. Those original Moravian stars were made of folded paper with 26 points in a shape technically known as a stellated or augmented rhombic-octahedron. But since those days, Moravians have designed stars with many more points.
I had been talking to a gentleman who had been to Germany, and he came back with a pattern of a 110-point star. And I was able to get that pattern.
That very star now hangs in the entryway of the Single Brothers house, and is the first thing that visitors see as they enter Candle Tea.
When the door opens, that light broadcasts out into the darkness. It's just amazing to see. I think probably the best story that I heard on the star, a little girl came in that was just not much more than a toddler, but could speak, and she was looking up at the star and she said to her mother, "Does Jesus work here?" And one of the ladies from Candle Tea said, "Yes, honey, he does."
One of the oldest Moravian Christmas traditions is that of the Puts, an elaborate nativity scene.
Every early Moravian family would have had a nativity scene, and that is where ours is. We also have a miniature version of what this whole neighborhood would have looked like a long time ago.
That word putzen means to decorate. And prior to Christmas trees, people decorated their homes with greenery and a lot of natural things. And for Moravians, because of their strong Christian faith and belief in Christ and what Christ does in our lives, they would often put out a nativity setting.
In the early days here in Old Salem, people would put decorations in their home and then invite people to come in and see them. Okay, the Salem Put started in 1949. It was created by a group of model railroad builders, and they began by creating the square with 9 buildings, and completed that the first year on a wooden platform. And over the years, it has expanded to where it includes almost all of the historical district of Old Salem today, with as many buildings as we could possibly put on it over time.
It looks like what Salem would have looked like probably around 1900. Okay, these are all individual buildings that have been built over a course of about, 60 or 70 years. And they are very meticulous. No, I recall one person saying that somebody actually counted the bricks on the right-hand side of Main Hall to get it right. So all of these buildings are handmade.
So they have built all the buildings to scale out of balsa wood and particle board and paper and all kinds of things and painted them. They have hills sculpted from styrofoam and they put lights in them. The buildings, put all the buildings in place, all the trees in place, make it snow.
We put what they call marble dust. It looks just like snow. We've got a company here in town that donates it to us. We'll put about 200 pounds of this stuff over the scene. We'll put tracks in with tweezers. A snowy winter day is what it looks like. And we try to be accurate to what it actually is, and for 1900, it's pretty close.
I always will remember the puts, how cool it is, detailed. They even put little footprints after the people walking in the snow on the puts.
There is something new added to the puts every year.
Putting something new on your puts every year is one of the requirements. And it doesn't have to be anything very elaborate. It just has to be something that you've added for the first time. There's always the interest in what is the new building on the puts for this year. You always get a ooh and an ah type of reaction from people who see it for the first time.
And then our second puts is the nativity scene, and that's when the Christmas story is read, and that concludes the candle tea.
You go into the last room and we have a beautiful carved wooden nativity set that's rather large, and the whole last room is set up with hillsides so that they can have where the shepherds were. They have the town of Bethlehem in the distance, and you retell the story of the birth of Christ.
The current figures we have are from Oberammergau, and they were donated by Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Farrell.
And especially as we thought about it, being the essence of Christmas, in the fact that there's a lot of activities that go on around Christmas, but where is really Christmas? And I thought that, especially the part that I like to do, and that's the nativity scene.
And you dim the lights, and there's switches you press, and you read the scripture, and different, like Bethlehem lights up, then the shepherds light up, the angels appear to the shepherds, that lights up. They go to Bethlehem, the stable lights up. It's just, and little children, I love to do that because the lights, and they, they have a reaction to it.
While organized by the Women's Fellowship of Home Moravian Church, the Candle Tea really is a project that involves everyone.
Really from early on in the Candle Tea, it really was a partnership between the men and women of the church. The men had kind of started a puts that they invited people to see, and the Women's Fellowship kind of came from the tea angle, more of a party gathering type of experience. So it's very natural that the two came together.
I actually got to work on the puts with my dad a couple of years, so we got to set up the tiny Salem scenes that everyone gets to enjoy when they get down there.
My responsibilities at the tea essentially are to start the fire in the morning and bank it at night. Also keep the lanterns clean and the cash boxes, and I'm also the all-around handyman since I'm there all day, every day.
The earliest involvement that I have memory of helping him out with the fire, changing the wood and stuff.
And he was about 4 years old when he started doing that.
There are many different ways that people can support the tea.
We've got one family, for example, that donates moss. And I mean, it's beautiful moss. You think about moss being no big deal. This is a lot of moss. You know, it's sort of different color, different texture. But it is really remarkable to see this scene. And it's got, you know, the wise men and, you know, baby Jesus and so forth.
And there are people I see every year in the same slots. And it doesn't matter whether it's raining or snowing or anything else. They're going to be here because it's such a part of their Christmas season as well.
I think once they've come, they're oftentimes hooked. We have many repeat visitors that come in. So it touches a lot of lives, yes, and the people really appreciate it. For many people have told me how it starts their Christmas season, puts them in the Christmas mood.
People will come and stand in line 2 to 3 hours, and they do it every year. They know that they're going to do it just to experience this, so that you can learn about our traditions and our faith. And when you finish, you have the Christmas spirit.
It's just watching people's faces that attend and talking to them and having them respond. And you can see sometimes what you've said has real meaning to them.
My own children, my daughter, who's now 50, started coming before she was a year old. My husband brought her the first year and carried her through when I was working. So she grew up on it.
And it's special. I don't think we've missed a year. We were not home church members, but we knew everybody was welcome. So we went, and there's a picture of myself in front of the brother's house with a sign of that era showing the hours and so forth.
We found a photograph from the Winston-Salem Journal when my daughter Frances over there on the end was 6 years old, and the photograph included me, Frances, and my mother as sort of a generational group at the Candle Tea.
So for me, those people that have been coming for decades, they come because they can't get enough of it, and because also there's something they see that's special that year.
I really feel like the Holy Spirit moves so beautifully through the entire experience. From everybody who puts in hundreds and thousands of hours to make this happen, to all the people that come to Candle Tea to share the common experience and to share our faith and to live it out in a really beautiful way.
And we are accomplishing a job that we think is pleasant for people to know, but in the final analysis, you see how much we love God, and we're doing it for that reason.
My first experience of Candle Tea was 51 years ago, and we came, and actually we've been every year since then, and we are so grateful, so grateful. In that first year, we had our first child who was seated on his daddy's shoulders almost the whole time during the evening, or either on his lap.
I love the idea that it's all full of the love, the traditions, and all that we are currently still doing, treasure and prize within our modern context, but these are reflective of all that we are built upon. So Candle Tea is a concentrated experience in traditions.
I am awed by Candle Tea every year because it represents the work and the love of so many church members and friends coming together to do this one thing. And I always come back to that moment with the church. I say, if we can do Candle Tea, we can do anything.
All of the proceeds of the Candle Tea are given to charitable causes carefully chosen by the women of the church.
After we've paid all our bills, we have a pot of money left over, and last year we gave away $26,000. That went both to local organizations, some Moravian, some not, and some missions around the world. We support a clinic in Honduras. We send money to school children in Kenya. We help local people get to doctor's appointments. They may not know that their money came from Candle Tea, but we reach far and wide.
The blessing on the people who are here continues on throughout the whole next year as it helps people in need and shows God's love.
The Shepherd Center of Greater Winston-Salem is an interfaith nonprofit organization. Our enthusiasm about the Candle Tea derives from the fact that we have benefited for about 18 years from the contributions that come from the income from that event. Our mission is to promote and support successful aging. So we have done that for 35 years.
Hi, I'm David Holston at Sunnyside Ministry. Sunnyside Ministry is a financial assistance agency in southern Forsyth County that provides food, financial assistance, clothing, financial literacy education, and scholarships to people in our community. The Candle Tea has benefited us for years with donations that help us be able to meet those needs and to help those people who need help not just now at the end of the year, but throughout the year.
For the last 90 years, the Candle Tea has brought the message of Christmas to the community and supported many charitable causes. One of the terrible side effects of COVID-19 will be the impact on these charities.
Everything we make, profits, is given away. And we're very worried this year because having no Candle Tea, because we usually give anywhere between $15,000 and $16,000 to charities, local, national, international, as we choose each year. So we will have a hard time finding the resources to do that this year.
It is going to be hard to not be together in Salem for Candle Tea this year for a lot of reasons. One of which is the opportunity that the community has to be generous to local nonprofits is going to be gone this year.
Then the ladies had a bright idea. What about an outdoor drive-by Candle Tea just for this year?
We have a lot of cars coming through. It's a free tour, but we're asking for donations and we're selling our candles.
Thank you so much for just sharing this with us.
Thank you.
Have a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
It's been real important to us to have some funds come in this year, which our drive-by guests have been very generous, and they're buying our candles, so we hope to still make some contributions this year.
If you want to help us support the charities that we fund every year, please visit our website at www.candletea.org for a link to donate. Thank you.